everyone, Ian Sturger here with the Remax Golfer team, and welcome back to our channel where we dive deep into the history, economics, politics, and real estate of Canada. Today we're stepping back to the 1930s, a tough time known as the Great Depression, to explore what was happening in Toronto's housing market. We'll look at the economic pressures that pushed tenants to the edge, the conflicts between landlords and renters, and how those struggles might have shaped the tenant rights we see in Canada and in Ontario today. So let's get started. The Great Depression kicked off with the stock market crash of 1929, and it hit Canada like a freight train. Canada relied heavily on exporting raw materials like wheat and timber, and when global demand tanked, so did our economy. In Toronto, things got rough fast. In 1933, about 30% of the city's workforce was unemployed. That's 1 in 3 people without a job. Even those who kept their jobs often saw their wages slashed by as much as 60%. Imagine trying to pay your bills when your income drops like that. For many families, rent became a huge burden, and housing turned into a battleground. Now, let's talk about what was happening in Toronto's real estate market. As you can imagine, with so many people out of work, landlords started seeing more vacant apartments and houses. Vacancy rates in Toronto climbed sharply. Single-family homes went from 1.6% vacancy in 1930 to 3.1% in 1933. And apartments and duplexes jumped from 9.4% to 15.8%. You think empty units would force landlords to lower rents, but many held firm, trying to cover their own costs. This created a real problem for tenants who were scraping by. Some landlords even pushed for evictions when tenants couldn't pay, which led to a lot of tension. This brings us to tenant resistance. While we don't have a clear record of organized rent strikes in Toronto during the 1930s, where tenants collectively refused payment, there's evidence of people fighting back against evictions. In East York, for example, communist activists got involved, rallying crowds to stop bailiffs from kicking families out of their homes. These weren't just random acts, they were part of a bigger wave of unrest. The Communist Party of Canada was active in Toronto, especially in working class areas like Spadina, Kensington Market, and Trinity Ballwoods. They organized garment workers, unemployed families, and others who were struggling. In 1935, the East York Workers Association even called a strike when relief payments, basically welfare for the unemployed, were cut. These actions showed how desperate people were, and housing was a big part of that struggle. Let's zoom in on the landlord-tenant conflicts. Back then, landlords had a lot of power. There weren't strong laws to protect tenants, so if you fell behind on rent, you could be out on the streets with very little warning. Many tenants lived in rooming houses where multiple families shared a single building, often in cramped, substandard conditions. These houses popped up during the Depression as homeowners tried to make ends meet by renting out rooms. But the conditions, think no heat, pests, or shoddy repairs, made life even harder for tenants. When landlords raised rents or ignored complaints, it pushed people to the breaking point. So how did all this affect tenant rights in Canada and Ontario? Well, the 1930s didn't see immediate changes to housing laws, but the struggles laid important groundwork. The poverty and unrest of the Depression showed that tenants needed more protection from landlords who could just evict them too easily. Fast forward to the 1970s, and Ontario passed the Residential Tenancy Act. This law set rules to stop unfair evictions and limit rent increases, giving tenants more security. Rent control also came into play later, tying rent hikes to things like consumer price index. These changes didn't happen overnight, of course, but the hard times of the 1930s likely made it clear that the system needed to balance things out for renters. Let's wrap this up with a big picture view. The Great Depression was a brutal time for Toronto, and housing was at the heart of many struggles. While we don't have stories of massive rent strikes like in New York or Glasgow, the resistance to evictions and the organizing by groups like the Communist Party showed how much tenants were hurting. Those challenges helped shape a future where tenant rights became a priority in Ontario and Canada. Today, as we deal with our own housing affordability issues in Toronto, it's worth remembering the 1930s. It's a reminder that when people come together, whether it's blocking an eviction or pushing for better laws, they can make a difference. Thanks for watching, everyone. If you found this dive into Toronto's history interesting, give it a like, subscribe, and hit that bell so you don't miss our next video. Let me know in the comments what other parts of Canada's history or real estate you'd like covered. Until next time, I'm Ian Strucker with the RE/MAX Golf team, and I will see you on the next one.